When I started the transformation of my writing and recording setup, the goal was to have a creative space that was intuitive and allowed me to move freely between the instruments without having any technical obstacles. I wanted to be able to let my mind go into discover mode as opposed to engineer mode. And it's not just about working faster either. It's more about having an experience and allowing myself to get lost in what I'm trying to write. Having everything on and being able to jump between the instruments freely makes that really simple and a ton of fun. But first, since I didn't do a demo in the first video I did about this new setup, let's check out a little ditty I put together. Okay, so what do you think? Fine. Since my initial video about integrating the guitar pedal rig with the piano, a lot has changed. If you want to see where all this started, I'll put a link to that video down in the description. Overall though, it has worked really, really well, and this has become my main writing tool. I really love the tactile experience of this. I love the instant feedback of hearing the piano, and I really enjoy how different pedals interact, or different pedal combinations interact with the piano. You come up with some really cool vibes, and you can make this sound like something completely not a piano, which I also think is kind of cool. As I got into writing, and this happened like in the first 4 or 5 days, I realized there were a few things that I needed to change to make this whole process even more efficient. And that was getting the drums that are back over behind me, or the organ that's on the other side of the room. I wanted to have all of that integrated into this setup as well, so at any point, if I needed to lay a track down on the drums, or if I just wanted to go get a different sound on the organ, I could just turn those on and go do that. And I didn't have a simple way of doing that. I would have to unplug, a mic from the pre, or a cable from the pre, and go plug something in over the drums, because I don't always have a drum setup on the Trident in the control room. Depending on who I've been working with that week, the drum setup is constantly changing. And I needed a way to do this by myself in this room. So what did I do? I grabbed my old Mackie 1604 mixer, and that helped me integrate everything into the room and have it at the ready at any point in the writing process. I do want to emphasize that none of this is about technically working faster. It's all about staying in a creative headspace and not have any of the technical stuff get in the way of that. Now I want to walk you through the new signal flow for the pedal board, how the drums and the organ are all integrated with the Mackie, and then we'll go listen to a few parts from that wacky little tune in the intro. I have 2 stereo sets of mics on the piano. On top right now I'm using a pair of Roswell Pro Audio Mini K87s. They are going directly to a modded M-Audio DMP3. It's not the most exciting mic pre, but it is pretty transparent, and it's what I have to use, so I'm using it and it works well. That is going directly into the Motus in the control room and into Logic. On the bottom, I have a pair of Roswell Pro Audio Colarises, and I like miking the upright down below. It gets a little tricky if there's a lot of pedal work because it gets a little noisy, but if it's minimal or fairly quiet on the pedal work, this is a great place to mic an upright piano. Now this is where things get interesting. The Colarises go to the S8 mic splitter. One split is feeding the Overstayer mic pre's, Those are patched directly into the Motu I/O in the control room and go directly into Logic. The other split, or one channel of the other split, goes down to the Mackie on channel 3, which is my effect send for the pedal rig. And I'm using aux 1 to send up to the pedal rig. And the reason I'm using the aux and not the direct out is any mic that I have patched into or any signal that I have patched into the Mackie can potentially be sent to the guitar pedal chains. Okay, now for the fun stuff. The effects pedals. Currently I'm running 2 different chains, a mono chain and a stereo chain. But the whole thing starts with the DIY RE L2A reamp box that is being fed from aux 1 on the Mackie. That goes to the Electro Harmonix String 9. I'm using this as an effect pedal, but I'm also using this as my split between the stereo and the mono channel. At some point, I will add an actual ABY here, but for the current songs that I'm working on, the String 9 is actually a big part of some of that, and it works really well as a splitter. It has a dry out and a wet out. The dry output feeds the mono signal chain. The wet output feeds the stereo signal chain. I do have that pedal set up, so even when it's bypassed, it's still passing the dry signal on the wet output. That way, all of my stereo pedals that are happening after the String 9 are still in play. Both of those chains go to a DI, so there's a mono DI and a stereo DI, and go down to 3 channels on the Mackie. Channel 1 and 2 are the stereo effects. Channel 3 is the mono effect. The direct outs from those channels go directly to the Motu I/O in the control room and into Logic. I have 3 channels designated for drums, and I just have them labeled drums 1, 2, and 3 because it's not always the same setup. Sometimes it's just a mono mic that I'm using, sometimes it's a kick and an overhead, or maybe I'm using a room. Whatever sound I'm trying to create determines the mic setup. But once I set that on the Mackie, it's pretty much set it and forget it, and I can go back and forth to the drums and piano, and I never have to worry about my levels. I can just hit record and go. The organ right now, I have 1 channel designated, and that's channel 8. And that's typically a mic on either the Ampeg bass rig or the guitar rig that at the moment is either the Blackstar head or the Marshall head. This setup is working really well right now, but at some point I probably will add a 500 series rack in here with a few different mic pre-choices, maybe even some compressors, just for different options while I'm tracking. The Mackie's gonna stay. It's kind of an integral part of being able to set all my levels sitting right here and not have to walk back and forth between the control room. It's also going to play an important role in monitoring when I bring the reel-to-reel 8-track out here and start recording with that. I'm going to need the 8 other channels that I'm not using right now for monitoring purposes. And that's the new signal flow for the entire room. Okay, as promised, it's time to take a listen to a few of the pieces from the little ditty in the beginning of the episode. I have Zounds affiliate links to a lot of the pedals that I'm using down in the description. So if you're in the market for some pedals, would appreciate it if you'd use those links. Help support the channel, doesn't cost you any extra money. I'll start with the main piano parts. The intro piano is the combination of the mics as well as the mono and stereo effects chain. The mono chain is the Earthquaker Devices Rainbow Machine and the Zvex Mastotron. The stereo effects channel is the Electro Harmonix String 9, Lester K, and the Boss RE202 Space Echo. The piano part on the A and B section uses the mics and only the stereo effects chain, and that is the Electro Harmonix Lester K and the Boss RE202 Space Echo. Let's take a listen. Next up is our organ bass, which is the pedals on the M3 going through the Ampeg bass rig. Pedals on the front end are the Ampeg bass scrambler and the Boss CE2B chorus pedal. Next up for our rhythm section is the drums, which is a combination of the microphones and the mono effects channel consisting of the ZVEX Mastotron. There is a synth pad, or what I call the synth pad, which is a combination of the Electro-Harmonix String 9, Lester K, and the Boss RE202. And on the B section, I'm actually keeping the Kolaris mics on the bottom open just for a little extra impact. The next up is one of my favorite parts in this whole piece. I call it my funky wah bass, which is actually the piano going through the mono chain consisting of the Boss SY200 synth pedal. Added a little organ reinforcement of the piano part on the second A section, not using any of the effects here, just the Ampeg bass scrambler on the front end of the Ampeg bass rig. Okay, that's a little taste of some of the sounds that are possible with this setup. It gets even more fun when you start to adjust the parameters in real time, which I'm doing on the synth pad sound throughout this entire piece. If you have any cool recommendations for some guitar pedals, please let me know in the comments. I'm always on the hunt for new sounds. Now I'm gonna leave you with a little more serious version of the music video so you can see some of the recording in action. Thank you all for joining me on this video. Go make some music, and we'll see you next time.